What's the most shocking thing someone's done to you during a date? Story 1. I had been looking forward to this date for weeks. I met Alex through a mutual friend, and we'd been texting for a while. He was charming, funny, and had a great sense of humor. And from our conversations, I thought we were really clicking. We decided on a dinner date at a local Italian restaurant. Something casual, but still nice. I arrived a little early, as I tend to do, because I like to get comfortable in new places before the awkwardness of meeting someone sets in. I walked in, the scent of freshly baked bread hitting me immediately, and a sense of excitement ran through me. I was hopeful. I wanted this to be a good night. Alex showed up right on time wearing a casual blazer and looking even better in person than in his pictures. We shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and sat down at our table. It was all smooth sailing for the first 15 minutes. We talked about our jobs, hobbies, and general life stuff. Everything seemed normal, even nice. He was easy to talk to, and the conversation flowed naturally. But then something happened that threw me completely off. We were about halfway through our meal when Alex's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then casually set it face up on the table. I didn't think much of it at first. People get texts, right? But then, after a few seconds, he picked it up, checked the message, and smiled. A strange smile, the kind of smile that was a little too satisfied. I felt a flutter of unease. He wasn't hiding his phone, but he wasn't acting like someone receiving a message from a friend either. "Sorry, I need to respond to this real quick," he said. Again, no big deal. Everyone has stuff to manage during a date. But then he started typing fast, almost aggressively fast. His fingers were flying across the screen. I tried to stay cool, not wanting to seem paranoid or intrusive, but I couldn't help noticing how his body language shifted. He was leaning forward, eyes locked on the screen, and his lips were tight in a way that made me feel more like a bystander in his personal drama than a participant in our date. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Yeah," he said, still not looking up. "Just work stuff." A few minutes passed. I sat there, trying to focus on my pasta, but I couldn't stop glancing at the phone. His sudden shift in demeanor had me intrigued, and frankly, a little unnerved. Then his fingers paused and he turned the phone face down again, but not before I saw the last word that flashed on the screen. "Babe." I froze. It took everything in me to not let my face show the shock I was feeling. Babe? He had just called me babe minutes ago, but now I was reading something that made it seem like he was texting someone else. Someone who wasn't just a friend. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe it was a coworker, maybe it was nothing. But as the minutes ticked by, I felt like a fool. "Who's that?" I finally blurted out, not able to keep it in anymore. He looked up, his face now pale. For a second, there was panic in his eyes, and then he quickly picked up his phone and shoved it into his pocket. "It's nothing, just a friend," he said, but his voice faltered slightly. I didn't know how to respond. There was no nothing about the text I had seen. Babe wasn't just a friend, and that's when it all hit me. It wasn't just that he was texting someone else, it was how he tried to play it off, how nonchalantly he assumed I wouldn't catch on, how in one moment everything that seemed so perfect fell apart. "I think I'll just head home," I said, trying to stay calm but failing miserably. "Thanks for the dinner." His face turned a deep shade of red and he muttered something about explaining, but I was already standing up, grabbing my purse and walking out the door. I don't even know if he called me. I didn't check. All I wanted was to get away from the situation. When I got home, I blocked his number and deleted him off social media. I thought I was done with the situation, but the most shocking part was yet to come. Later, I ran into him in the grocery store. He was with her, the girl he had been texting. They looked so happy together. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just been lied to, I had been an afterthought in someone's side hustle. That was the most shocking thing someone has ever done to me during a date. Story 2. I had been dating Jack for a couple of months, and to be honest, I wasn't sure where things were headed. We had some great dates, shared a lot of laughs, but I wasn't completely convinced that he was the one. I mean, don't get me wrong, he was a nice guy, very thoughtful, but there were a few red flags that I couldn't ignore. The way he would push me to make decisions that I wasn't comfortable with, or how he always seemed to be a little too eager to move things along. But then he planned this amazing date. It started off so simple. A nice dinner at a restaurant I had been wanting to try, followed by a walk by the beach. Nothing too extravagant. And the night seemed perfect. He was charming, everything felt relaxed, and I started to think maybe I was just overthinking it. The walk by the beach was romantic, and we talked about our future plans, what we wanted to do, where we saw ourselves in a few years. It felt like a typical conversation that couples would have. I started to feel more comfortable with him, and my walls began to come down. We sat on a bench by the shore, and the moonlight was reflecting off the water, giving everything an almost magical feel. I felt a little spark of hope that maybe this could work out after all. And then, out of nowhere, Jack turned to me with the most serious look on his face. "I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice a little shaky. I was about to ask what he meant when he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat. At first, I thought I was overreacting. I mean, we'd been dating for just a couple of months. It couldn't be. I hadn't even thought we were at that point. I felt my throat dry up as I watched him get down on one knee in front of me. For a second, I thought I was going to faint right there. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. I was completely frozen. My mind was racing, and everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. This couldn't be real. Was he serious? We hadn't even talked about our future in such a concrete way. I thought we were just figuring things out, still in that stage where we were getting to know each other better. I blinked, trying to get my bearings, but the words didn't come. He looked at me with such intensity, waiting for a response. And there I was, completely stunned, wondering if I had somehow missed something along the way. I tried to open my mouth, but no sound came out. "Jack," I finally managed to say, my voice weak. "This is way too soon. I don't think we're ready for this." He didn't seem to take it well. His face fell. "I thought this was what we wanted," he muttered, standing up. The ring in his hand seemed to burn through my vision, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to hurt him, but I couldn't lie to him either. "I'm sorry," I said, standing up too, trying to avoid his eyes. "I just don't feel the same way yet. This is all too much." The silence that followed was suffocating. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. I was on the verge of tears, not because I was sad, but because I felt like I had completely shattered something he had been holding on to. He finally broke the silence, looking hurt but trying to hold it together. "I just thought you were the one. I thought we were meant to be." I didn't know how to respond. My chest tightened, and I felt a lump in my throat. I tried to explain that I wasn't ready for that kind of commitment, but every time I spoke, I felt like I was making things worse. After an awkward silence, we both agreed to go home. The drive back was tense. Jack barely spoke. I could see that he was disappointed, and I couldn't blame him, but I also couldn't pretend that I was ready for a proposal after just a couple of months of dating. It felt like he had rushed something that needed more time. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about how surprised I was by the entire situation. I didn't know what I had expected out of this date, but it definitely wasn't a proposal. It was a shock, a complete turn of events that threw me off completely. In the days that followed, things were different between us. Jack started pulling away, and so did I. I could tell he was hurt, and I didn't know how to fix it. We didn't see each other much after that, and eventually he ended things. I could see it in his eyes when we had the final conversation. He wasn't angry, just disappointed, and I was left with a sense of guilt, knowing that I had been honest about not being ready for that commitment. But at the same time, I also felt a sense of relief. Looking back, I realized how shocking that proposal was. Not just because of how unexpected it was, but because it made me realize that we weren't on the same page. It's easy to get caught up in someone else's idea of a relationship, but it's important to stay true to your own feelings, even if it means turning down a proposal that feels too soon. And to this day, I still think about that night and how it taught me to always take things at my own pace. Story 3. I had been talking to Chris for a few weeks before we decided to go out on our first official date. We met on a dating app, and honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. The messages were casual and fun, but nothing about them screamed, "This is going to be amazing." Still, I was open to meeting new people, so when he suggested we meet at a local jazz bar, I agreed. When I arrived, the place was buzzing with energy. The lights were dim, and there was a live jazz band playing in the corner. The atmosphere was perfect, calm yet lively. It felt like the kind of place where you could relax and enjoy a drink while having a good conversation. Chris was already there waiting for me at the bar. He looked exactly like his pictures. Tall, with a slight smile on his face, dressed in a casual shirt and jeans. I couldn't help but think that maybe this could turn out to be a great night after all. We greeted each other with a hug and exchanged pleasantries. I was surprised at how easy it was to talk to him, how natural the conversation felt. We shared stories about our childhoods, talked about our favorite music, and laughed about random things. It was one of those dates where time seemed to slip away unnoticed and everything just flowed. But then, about an hour into the date, something strange happened. Chris suddenly got up from his seat and said, "Hey, I need to grab something from my car. I'll be right back." I nodded, thinking nothing of it. I watched him walk out of the bar and continued sipping my drink, chatting with the bartender a little bit to pass the time. It wasn't until 20 minutes passed, and then 30 minutes, that I began to feel uneasy. Where was he? I texted him asking if everything was okay, but there was no response. An hour passed, my drink was empty, and I was starting to feel frustrated. I was sitting there, alone, in a place I had never been, wondering if I had somehow been ditched. The worst part? I had no way of reaching him. I didn't have his phone number yet. We'd only been texting through the app. The more I thought about it, the more my mind started spinning. Had he just gotten up and left without saying anything? Had something happened to him? Or was this all some kind of weird joke? At this point, I felt both confused and awkward, sitting at the bar all alone. I tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone, but the unease kept building. I didn't want to make a scene or do anything that might make me look stupid, but I had to get answers. I stood up to leave, figuring that maybe I'd just walk out and head home, when suddenly I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, and there he was, but not quite how I expected him to be. Chris was holding a large bouquet of roses, a giant grin on his face, looking like he had just been through some sort of secret mission. He had a strange look in his eyes, as if he was proud of himself, but also a little anxious. "Surprise," he said, holding out the flowers toward me. I stared at him for a moment, completely baffled. "What's going on? Where have you been?" Chris smiled sheepishly. "So here's the thing," he started, as if this was all part of a carefully planned speech. "I wanted to make this date special. I had an idea. So I left to get the roses, but I didn't want to make it too obvious. I wanted you to think I had left to see what you would do." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He continued, "I wanted to test how much you'd care. I know, it's a little weird, but I thought it would be fun to see if you'd wait for me or just leave. I didn't think it would be this long, but I had to make sure you weren't just here for the free drinks or whatever." I stood there, completely stunned. My mouth was dry, and I didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. The fact that he had set up this entire test was honestly baffling. I could feel my face turning red with embarrassment, partly because I had no idea how to process what had just happened, and partly because I had just been sitting alone for an hour wondering if I was being stood up. "Are you serious?" I asked, trying to hold back the frustration in my voice. "You left for an hour just to test me?" He nodded, his expression apologetic but still hopeful. "Yeah, I thought it would be funny, but I see now it was a bit too much. I'm sorry, I should have just told you what I was doing." I didn't know what to say. I mean, yes, I could understand wanting to surprise someone or make the date memorable, but this was a whole new level of weird. He had just left me hanging completely in the dark, and when he came back, it was with roses like some kind of reward for putting up with his bizarre game.